Hey guys, what's going on? It's Meshi with Pet Wellness with Meshi. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 2019's June's summer solstice. And I'm going to be sharing with you about the top 5 things that you actually need to know so that you are emotionally and energetically ready for it. So if you're brand new to sort of figuring out what summer solstice and the energies around you are all about, stay tuned and let's get right into it. We have talked briefly about this earlier in my video when we were talking about the full moon and what you can expect. So energetically, you might be feeling slightly out of place. So one of the first things that I wanted you to know about summer solstice is that on June 21st, we are marking the longest day of the year. So we have solstices twice a year, once in the winter and once in the summer. In the winter time, it marks the shortest day of the year, and in the summertime, it marks, depending on where you are in the world, that will determine if you're in the northern hemisphere, then this will mark the longest day of the year. And if you're in the southern hemisphere of the world, then that marks the beginning of winter for you, and it also marks the shortest day. So you have the least amount of sunlight. In the northern hemisphere, however, it marks the beginning of summer and full harvest. This is where the sun reaches the highest, most northernmost point in the sky, which is why we have sunlight for the longest amount of time. And that usually happens each year. It happens between the 20th to the 22nd of June. So in our case, it will actually happen on June 21st, but it depends on where you are in the world, and that will determine if it's the 21st or 22nd. So it's kind of up for debate. Now, here's what we need to know. So number 1 is that it is going to be the longest day of the year. Number 2, shift, and allow the changes. And we've briefly talked about this a little bit earlier this week when we were talking about the full moon and the energies of the moon. And this sort of goes back into that. So you may be feeling like as we're shifting out from spring and into summertime, you may be feeling that it's time for changes and it's time for shifting and it's time for allowing to sort of figure out what your personal next steps are going to be. And some of you may be feeling this energetic shift a little bit stronger than others. So you may be feeling aggravated, you may be feeling slightly out of place, like something is sort of not right. That's this energy right now that you're feeling this week, and it is quite strong. So instead of resisting it, my big advice to you would be to go deep within and inquire rather than trying to quiet that voice down, because something is trying to come out for you that you need to sort of shift or slightly pivot into a newer direction that's ultimately going to be for your own growth. Number 2, or actually we're on to number 3. Number 3 is to bring awareness to the things that are bubbling up. Now, what does that mean? You may be finding that, well, first of all, things don't work in absolutes. So what that means is that things might be bubbling up for you because you're starting to see certain awareness, and you're becoming aware of your surrounding of some of the things that you have been exposed to. For example, certain videos and certain things are breaking out. Some of them are very negative, and things are bubbling up to the surface, and you're noticing them. And you actually, this is a really beautiful thing. If you're seeing certain scandals are happening, and I mean, scandals are going to be happening no matter what, but it's more about your personal awareness around it and how you're choosing to sort of respond and to engage or not to engage. So one of the most recent ones that comes to my mind personally is the Jaclyn Hill scandal. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can just Google Jaclyn Hill, and she has a YouTube channel, but she's going through hell because she released lipsticks that had, people were saying that there was hair and mold and little dust and whatever. So right now she's dealing with that turmoil. But so many people are focused on, but that's me without like getting too much deep into the actual scandal. But I just want you to see what is coming up and then how you choose to respond to it. So like my take on the whole Jaclyn Hill thing, without really going too much into detail, I will let you do your own research and you can kind of come to your own conclusion. But especially within the beauty community, this becomes very evident that certain people or certain companies kind of grow to a point, and then after that something happens and it becomes a scandal because something wasn't done right, and then people that follow the influencers are now becoming more aware of sort of what's happening. And then you have a choice. What will I do with this information? Am I going to continue down the same path of being mindless about it? Or am I going to be part of that change, bring awareness around it, and just sort of choose differently? How will you choose differently? Well, this, I feel like, especially within a conventional beauty community, I feel like that the change, it's becoming more and more evident as certain scandals are breaking out, that what we have been focusing on is not the thing that we need to really focus on. So all of the external things, like here's a new product, here's more money, here's more fame, here's more power, instead of focusing on these external way of measuring success, we need to sort of shift and start asking bigger questions as consumers of what do we really need? What is this thing that's giving us? Like, what is it really giving us truly? And how will we use that as a tool? How will we use that as if you are that influencer, how are you using your platform to influence positive change? So that's kind of what I mean by things are bubbling up, and whatever community you're following, you will probably find that things are bubbling up to the surface one way, shape, or form. And don't expect things to just be completely positive or completely negative, or really bright and shiny or completely dark and full of shadows, because nothing works in absolutes. Everything kind of works in synchrony with each other. And the energy this week is a perfect example and like a perfect illustration of how you have the opportunity to work with these shifts, to work with this energy. And then it's ultimately up to you to decide sort of what you will do with that. Next up is, as we're entering, and Sun is also entering into Cancer. So as we're entering into Cancer, we have the opportunity with the summer solstice to ultimately celebrate light and create your own ritual, get deep and get grounded, go deep within once again, and sort of see what comes up for you. Is it more frustration? Is it, you have to again do some free journaling to inquire where you're at energetically, because it might be completely different than where you were earlier this week. But ultimately, your job right now is to be the light, celebrate the light. We have more extended amounts of sunlight for this day than any other day. We get to really, and I mean culturally, if you're looking at many different traditions, whether we're looking at Hindus or Buddhist, or if we're looking at, natives, it doesn't matter. They all had their own form of rituals. They all had their own form of celebrating the sun, celebrating the sunlight that ultimately gives us life. So I'm hoping that you will find your own way of working with this energy and creating your own beautiful ritual that will really put the importance on light and positive energy and what you're ultimately here to do, which is to raise the vibration and raise those standards from what we've been living in. So hence why we're sort of, it's a shift and allow the changes to come through. And whether those changes are sort of bringing you certain emotions up that you might not be ready to deal with, just allow that to move through you rather than clinging onto it and resisting that change, because then that way it has the ability to move through much, much faster versus clinging onto it and then you're repeating patterns once again. So just pay attention to what are your old patterns. And that brings me to number 5. Pay attention to what are your old patterns, how you have responded in the past, and choose differently, because now we can create that little bit of space where you can actually gain perspective and choose differently. And sometimes we need that moment to pause, create space, and then we can move forward and choose differently. But then this is how we grow and this is how we evolve as humans. So I'm hoping that instead of looking at things that are not really working in our culture and in our society, I'm hoping that you're not using those things as a way for you to be outraged. I'm hoping that you're using those things as a way of, we brought some darkness to the light, and now we have the conscious choice of choosing differently. Choose from that conscious place where you can create your own destiny and you can move forward in a more positive, more mindful way. So these are some of the things that are coming up for this summer solstice. I would love to hear from you of how you're going to be choosing to celebrate it. I know that within the yoga community, it becomes one of the biggest and strongest days for yoga. A lot of people are gathering together. I believe that in my city in particular, people are going to be gathering together to create like one of the biggest, I believe that they're trying to actually break a Guinness record of the most amount of people gotten together to meditate. I believe that there's going to be some gatherings for yoga as well. I believe in parks and just in public places where people can practice. I think that this is such an exciting time because we can dig deeper, understand sort of what our role is within society, and then we can sort of choose what our path is. And summer solstice is such a beautiful way to really celebrate the light and be the light. And really we can choose from a place of empowerment rather than just from a place of conformity. I would love to hear from you guys. Comment down below and let me know how you're choosing to celebrate the summer solstice this year. It is coming up really soon, and I am so excited for this because it's bringing such abundant changes and positive changes into our lives, and maybe we need to kind of walk through some of the mucky stuff, but that's sort of part of the deal anyway. And thank you so much once again for sticking with me, for joining me. I so appreciate this. If you are brand new here on this channel, consider subscribing, and you can also hit the notification bell so you get updated every single time I release a new video. We usually chat here about 2 to 3 times a week, and we talk about spirituality and spiritual practices, as well as how we can take more conscious control of our own health and our own lives in a more conscious way. So if that sounds good to you, then I would love to have you within the community. And in the meanwhile, keep celebrating, you guys, and keep shining your light. And I will see you again in my next video. Bye.